Going beyond the headlines. Asking the questions you want answered. Exploring government policies and how they impact you. We are delving deeper.
Good evening and welcome to Delving Deeper. I am your host, Ayana Carter. Joining us this week are Transport Commissioner, Mr. Clive Clarke, and Traffic Enforcement Coordinator, Mr. Adrian Winter. Gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ayana. Thank you.
Later on, we will be joined by Assistant Commissioner Prakash Chaitram and Motor Vehicle Supervisor 2, Wendell Ward. Mr. Clarke, let's begin our discussion with you just telling us a little bit about your responsibilities as Transport Commissioner.
Thank you again, Ayana, for the opportunity in sharing this information. One of the things, though, that you will recognize when I describe myself in the context of Transport Commissioner, you will hear two terms: Transport Commissioner, Licensing Authority. We just need to understand it's one of the same. The Transport Commissioner is basically given his responsibility in context of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act 4850. And it clearly says that the Transport Commissioner is responsible for the registration of motor vehicles, inspection, and the issue of driver's permit, and more so, and for the enforcement of the necessary laws surrounding the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act and other vehicle regulated laws. So let's talk about basically the Insurance Act and that sort of thing.
Okay. Now, there was an incident recently in Tobago where the wife of THA Chief Secretary was stopped by some of your officers, and she was found to not be driving with her driver's permit. Now, looking back at what transpired, do you think that that situation could have been handled a bit differently, or how could it have been handled a bit differently?
Okay, let me answer this question in a certain way. I don't want to answer this question in the context of the incident because I don't want to spend much time with that matter that took place recently. I want to answer the question in the context of standard operating procedures for all. And my transport officers, or license officers as you may know, operate with certain standard procedures that we must ensure that we don't show certain favors to certain persons in the context of law. In other words, the service we dished out to individual X must be the same for individual Y. So standard operating procedures in the context of when we are treating with situations where persons do not have in their presence a driver's permit, we have to then go back to law again. And what does the law say? The law says basically in the event, it makes it clear that you must have, I think it's section 56(1) of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, you must have with you in person or in the vehicle your driver's permit to be presented to a constable, basically, and then further define constable as whosoever that constable could be. So we are more or less classified there. So you must have it in person. Secondly, it also says that one can be issued a summons, a summary offense for not having that, and then obviously that there's a penalty that goes along with it if it is challenged in court. Now, these are situations we find on a day-to-day basis for some reason. So what we treat with in the context of following law, the first thing we attempt to do is to neutralize the position. You do not have your permit, you cannot drive. Because you have no imperial evidence to say that I'm allowed to drive. So we take steps basically to have the vehicle placed at a particular location in proximity that is safe from the traffic area. And we advise the person it may be wise to make arrangements to get access to your permit. Someone can bring it for you, or you can make arrangements to have that permit basically, you can have someone drive the vehicle for you, right? So, and this is standard operating procedures, and normally this is what persons comply with. And in so doing, this is exactly what would have transpired, as we say, in all situations. And so it's not something different for one and different for the other. In the circumstance where you described a while ago, standard operating procedures were followed, and therefore the necessary action took place in accordance with that.
There has been a reported increase in the number of road traffic exercises being carried out by licensing officers. Why is this, and are they yielding results?
Yeah, most definitely. I'm glad you asked that question. I need to basically say first, though, that and your question is specific to licensing officers, but we need to also be mindful that licensing officers work closely with TTPS in coordinating certain operations, and you will see why I need to say that. And Mr. Adrian will talk to certain statistics in a while. We have observed, apart from the regular offenses that we may stop vehicles for on a day-to-day basis, and our other officer may describe that, we have observed since the introduction of the new fixed penalty system, a number of persons have been trying to evade the system and have been driving with extremely high number of demerit points. And I will tell you something. Recently, I signed a document with someone we caught through the same road exercises with 128 demerit points, because there's a process one must go through. So persons are sometimes seeking to evade basically that process. And through our joint operations with TTPS, we have been identifying and finding a number of those persons. In addition to that, we have situations where because of the new systems we have put in licensing, it's easy for us to recognize that some of these individuals are also driving with fraudulent permits. And therefore, fraudulent permits to the point of permits basically impersonating somebody else. So what we have to do, we have to find ourselves in a unique situation, attempting to trace the vehicle that has been used in that offense certain times, and therefore set up these road operations. I want to say we have, within the past 6 months, we have basically identified over 400 persons driving with demerit points above 10 in Trinidad and in Tobago. It is happening. Hence, we are seeing the results coming out from those operations.
And I'm glad that you mentioned the collaboration between your office and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, because I would also like to ask about the collaborative process during the exercises and in the planning of these exercises.
Lovely. I'm glad you answered. I want to take the second part first, right? Because given the challenges we are facing, many times we have to sit down and basically plan out our operations. And we have been getting that high level of support from the TTPS. I want to take the opportunity to say thanks. Through my instructions, my senior officers, who refer to as my motor vehicle supervisor too, and his staff normally will work with TTPS and will strategize days, time, sites, the impact. We look at possible traffic impacts. We look at times when it's time for us to ensure that the traffic flows. We target persons who we might be, based on our records, we are able to now generate information in terms of who we are looking for, what we are looking for. On the ground itself, what we have also found, and this is why we need the strength of the TTPS, in road exercises, Ayana, you might be surprised to realize how many runners you have. And therefore, we have to sometimes set outriders, and we don't have the resources for that. So hence the TTPS resources, and through their skill set, have been bringing a number of persons to the point in which we can now deal with serious traffic offenses. And I want to dare say, on many operations with TTPS through traffic offenses, we are finding some other offenses as it relates to drugs, firearms, and that sort of thing. So we are more or less pleased to work with them, and we are seeing the success also.
I think this would be a good time to bring Mr. Winter into the conversation. Now, Mr. Winter, tell us how many tickets have been issued so far for the year, and what are the most common traffic violations?
Right, so Ayana, interestingly, if you had asked this question prior to 2020 thereabout, the information would have been very difficult to gather. But because we've had this new electronic means of tracking driving behavior, tracking tickets, I can safely tell you that so far for the year thus far, we have about 37,000 fixed penalty notices being issued. Compared to the same time last year, there was just about 32,000 fixed penalty notices issued. Now, the other thing that the system allows us to do is to track driving behavior through that of warnings. And what a warning is simply a law enforcement officer exercising discretion, but the discretion is tracked. So before a law enforcement officer would have stopped you, give you a warning saying, I observe that you committed a traffic offense. However, you know, they let you off. But this time we have an opportunity now to track it. So in addition to those 37,000 fixed penalty notices I'm referring to, the system has also recorded over 5,500 warnings. So there are 5,500 instances where persons would have not been issued a fixed penalty notice, but they would have been issued a slap on the wrist. Some of the most common traffic violations, and it has been worrying us over the years because this traffic violation continues to dominate every single year, and that is failure of a driver or passenger to wear a seatbelt. We have breach of traffic signs being a common traffic violation as well. Speeding is still ranking high there, as well as driving without an insurance, valid policy of insurance. So these continue to worry us. The use of the priority bus route without authorization. So these things continue to dominate the traffic offences, you know, landscape. But, you know, licensing, the TTPS, all law enforcement are doing their part in terms of getting that arrested.
A lot of these violations carry, you know, demerit points on someone's driver's license or driver's permit. At what point is a driver's permit taken away?
Right, so demerit points were really introduced to really monitor, track, and improve driver behavior. So demerit points came about as a result of the amendments to the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act. So what you saw happening with those amendments as well is that there was a decriminalization of these traffic offenses. So previously, if you were issued with a traffic ticket, you had 14 days to pay that ticket. And if you didn't pay it within that 14-day time frame, you automatically end up on the court schedule to face a magistrate to have to answer to that charge. Now, if you didn't show up for that court hearing, you will find yourself being issued a warrant. A warrant is to be issued for your arrest. And police officers have a way they like to come at your home 3 o'clock in the morning and knock down your door, and they take you to court the next morning. And of course, you're treated as a criminal. So one of the things we did with the revised fixed penalty notice system is that we decriminalized some of those traffic offenses, and we introduced the demerit point system as a means of tracking driving behavior. So as it relates specific to your question in terms of disqualification of a driving permit, when we're talking disqualification of a driving permit, we're talking about 2 different categories of drivers. So we have newly licensed drivers, and these are drivers who are in possession of a permit for 12 months or less. And if those drivers accumulate anything 7 demerit points and more, they can face a 12-month disqualification of their driving permit. If we are talking about experienced drivers, those are persons who have their permits in excess of 12 months. Anything between 10 and 13 demerit points can lead to 6 months disqualification. Anything between 14 and 19 points can lead to 1 year disqualification. And anything in excess of 20 demerit points can lead to 2 years disqualification. But important to note in this whole disqualification process is that due process must be followed. So what the licensing authority is required to do by law, and what we have been following by law, is that as long as you have accumulated these demerit points against your record, the licensing authority then issues you with a notice of intended disqualification. So we don't automatically disqualify you just like that. You have an opportunity to write to the licensing authority and provide us with your mitigating factors as to why you think your driver's permit should not be disqualified. But there's also the opportunity that if you do not provide us with those representation, the law provides the licensing authority with the go-ahead to still proceed in the absence of any representation. So we really truly advise persons that once you've been served with a notice of intended suspension or disqualification, use your opportunity to provide us with representations, because those representations are taken very seriously. Those representations, all those representations go to the Office of the Transport Commissioner. They are reviewed, and if you really receive a notice and don't provide us with any representations, we just go based on what the information is presented to us on the system. So if you use that opportunity presented to you in the law, you might very well present some mitigating factors that might change the decision accordingly.
What are some of the mitigating factors you have noticed coming into your office?
Well, I'll probably have to defer that to the transport.
Oh, Mr. Clarke.
The common ones, and these are not necessarily mitigating factors. I'm saying some of the things personally say. Normal Frequently we get concerns like, the family life will be interfered with. I may not be able to carry my child to school. I may not be able to provide for my family. I may have issues with my job, that sort of thing. And let me say this, and I want to say this on a serious note. This is a factor you get with every single person. And I want us to keep in mind, the merit points, as Mr. Winter described, is not something you wake up one morning and discover you have 10 demerit points. It's over a process. You get 2 or 3 or 4 tickets that accumulates to the merit points. And one need to think about some of those mitigating factors before you reach 10. And don't wait till they bring it to the commissioner. But then you get other mitigating factors where persons may send genuine information in the context, so that is not my driver's permit. And these are the ones we look out for, because I talked about the impersonation a while ago, the false permit we have within the environment, and the system picks that up. Might be wrong vehicle within the system. We have situations where law enforcement officers, I just signed one a while ago, basically placed the wrong vehicle number. He placed a 7 as opposed to a 4, and that sort of thing. And all these things, even wrong permit number, contribute to factors. You have to listen to persons concerned. And again, I want to support Mr. Winter, advise persons, when you have the opportunity, please show cause.
Yeah. So, you're saying that when you get to a certain number, it's 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. But how can persons still accumulate demerit points and still continue driving on our nation's roads?
Excellent. Mr. Winter would have described a while ago, it's a process. And one of the things, though, and this is what we find, and this is where I spoke about our collaboration with police, we have found sometimes persons trying to evade or breach the process. In other words, once you reach 10 demerit points, it triggers a process whereby we have to reach out to you through TT posts, etc. And they come and think, I don't want to bring a utility bill to license in because I really don't want them to know where I am living. And I don't want the mail to come at that location, etc. So we have situations like that. We cannot find persons. And as well as for some reason we know to the fact persons have not taken time to update their records within licensing division. So and then TTPOs do have some challenges sometimes in different areas. So persons, while we are going through the process, continue to rack up the merit points. But the biggest concern I have here as commissioner is that these persons are getting certain tickets or fixed penalty notices. I have some concerns with them. You're seeing a number of them for speeding, the ones that could impact you and my life. So we have a responsibility to try to find that person to ensure we commence the necessary steps for due process. And that is what normally happens. During the process, they continue to rack up points.
Yeah, but Ayana, if I could also supplement what the Transport Commissioners has also said, there are persons, and we have been picking them up every single week, whether it be licensing officers, TTPS officers, any law enforcement agency that's under the Act, have been picking up drivers who we have disqualified, drivers who have surrendered their permits to the licensing authority, and they still continue to drive. And we always use the opportunity whenever someone comes to the licensing authority at the point in time when their permit has been disqualified to do a bit of public education. And we always advise those persons, you are not allowed to drive while disqualified. During the period of disqualification, you're not the holder of a valid driver's permit. And as I indicated earlier on, these offenses are not criminal offenses. But you see, driving while disqualified, you then commit a criminal offense. And in all those instances, our officers are within their very right to arrest you without warrant. Those persons are then taken to the courts. I have seen instances where those persons have been put on bonds. I've seen instances where those persons have been given additional periods of disqualification. And I've seen 2 instances in my experience where persons have been convicted and they've been incarcerated as a result of driving while disqualified. Because, of course, to be found driving while disqualified because a law enforcement officer detects an offense. So your law enforcement officer might detect you. So you're already taking a chance to drive, but you're talking on your cell phone while driving. You're driving without your seatbelt. You're speeding. You're using a priority bus route. Something easily detectable by a law enforcement officer. When they stop you now and they pull it up on the system, and that's the thing. I don't think some of them realize how integrated the system is. So the system, with the TTPS system that they have on the roads, is very much integrated with the licensing database. So everything that's on the licensing database, law enforcement officers have access to it. So a law enforcement officer knows off the bat if someone has been disqualified. So they don't have to go through that long process again of summoning someone to court, because the information is right there before them that the person is indeed disqualified. So if I could use this opportunity to talk to those drivers who are currently disqualified by the licensing authority, or you may be disqualified by the court, because there are drivers who are also disqualified by the court for DUI offenses, for dangerous driving offenses. Please do not drive as disqualified. You then commit a criminal offense, and that's something you really don't want to get into your record, you know. So we really want to make that point and drive that point home. For no pun intended by driving the point home, but we really want to drive that point home to those disqualified drivers.
I just need to top off on this, and also to send a message, because what the common practice we see during the enforcement exercise in situations like this, persons attempt to mislead the police officers. So what do we say? And the transport officers, by saying, I forgot my permit home. You know the familiar story. I don't have my permit with me. And therefore, what we're really looking at here is someone trying to evade the system who has been disqualified. Yeah, so we do not take not having your permit in your possession lightly as transport officers. It's a serious, serious matter for us. We can conduct our checks by simply even checking the vehicle number, because this type of drivers have a behavior. So if they don't want to give you certain information, we can retrieve it and then trigger the next process, which it is an arrestable offense in case you are driving without. So driving without a permit is a serious matter.
For decades, we've heard about inefficiencies, alleged corruption taking place at the licensing office or the licensing division. So what is being done to bring about greater efficiency, public confidence in the licensing division?
You know, one of the things I want to capitalize on a point you make there, inefficiencies, I want to probably add to it, corruption, etc. As Transport Commissioner, one must recognize we have or had a problem, and we continue to have our challenges, and I'm very mindful of that. I also am very mindful that one of the weaknesses I would have identified in the organization in dealing with a number of matters, police matters, legal matters, is that we have found a number of documents tend to go missing. So what we're talking about here, basically, we're talking about accountability, being able to trace certain things. We have recognized some of our processes, some of our systems are not transparent enough, and it's not user-friendly, therefore it forces person to do that which is wrong. So therefore we have to look in the context of talking about transformation. And licensing department, I'm proud to say we are on a transformation initiative. And in doing so, we're talking about business processes modification, changing the way we do business, implementation of technology, implementing mechanisms where we could account and allow for proper audit trails to be able to track and trace some of these challenges. And most of all, we have gotten the necessary support. I want to take the opportunity to thank the Minister and my permanent secretary. We have gotten that high-level managerial support, the funding, the changing the legislation, as Mr. Winter would have described, the introduction of new systems. We have gotten that level of support to ensure that we bring that level of change to the licensing office. And I want to talk about our vision just before I end on that point. We operate on an approved vision, and there are three components to our vision. One is to be an exemplar in government service. My vision as Transport Commissioner, and I'm selling that vision to my other members of staff, and they are buying into it. We must be an exemplar in good government service. This is what we are moving to. We are seeking to be an exemplar in innovation. We must do things new. We must do things in a technological way. We want to be an exemplar in customer service. It's a difficult task. We are putting staff through training and middle management, counter staff, etc. It's costing us, but we have to take those steps. And most of all, we want to ensure that apart from the customers, that our employees are well empowered. Again, proper training and proper accessories and proper facilities for both employees and members of the public. So we are taking those steps, and we are seeing the difference.
Now let's pause to bring in Assistant Commissioner Prakash Chaitram and Motor Vehicle Supervisor 2, Wendell. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome.
Good
Good afternoon.
Thanks for having us.
Now, Mr. Chaitram, let's begin with you. Vehicle inspection, why is it important?
It is important because it is the law. You have to get your vehicle inspected. It is must, otherwise you'll be charged on the road. First of all, we had a moratorium before, and now the moratorium has finished. So now we have real people coming in to get their vehicles inspected, both in the private garages and also at licensing office San Fernando and Caroni.
What are some of the challenges you have encountered either at the inspection stations and during motor vehicle exercises?
Okay, so when we go out there on the road, recently we had exercises in Tobago, right? We're finding defective tires, brakes, people brakes not working. I bend down underneath that vehicle and the steering and nearly drop off. I had instances where I stopped a truck on the road. It was a class 5 truck with 8 tons of concrete. That inner rear tire, steel was showing in it. Now, if we had allowed that to go and that tire blew, that vehicle going to turn over and lives will be lost. So we had to stop the driver, ask the driver he didn't have a spare tire in his vehicle. So the company we had to wait 3 hours on the road. The company had to send a spare tire to change it on the road. So these are the challenges we're facing right now. I also had an instance about a couple of years ago. There was a road check, and also there was paving the road at the Couva, and a police officer was on duty at our WPC. And she stopped this guy on the road, and he could not stop because his brakes was not working, and the police officer died. I came in the station, when I checked, the vehicle had no brakes fluid even in the chamber. So these are the challenges we're facing right now. Even I had an instance where I went to a station to inspect a vehicle. The guy had no horn. When he blew his horn, a pedestrian was crossing. Pedestrian got injured, legs was amputated in the hospital. So these are the challenges we're facing right now.
And for persons who still think that, my vehicle, okay, we're good to go, what would you tell those persons who may be a bit hesitant?
I will tell the persons that come in at the licensing office, get your vehicle inspected, also at the private car station. So you see, when you come and you get your vehicle inspected, if there's defects, the officer or examiner will give it in a defect sheet, and you will know what to go and fix. Right? Days gone by when you was getting your vehicle inspected without it coming, it does not happen again. We have a new system where we snap the vehicle with a tablet. Once the vehicle is snapped, then a certificate will be printed and a sticker. So those days are gone without the vehicle coming. So once you come in at the licensing or the private cars section, we or the examiners will let you know what is wrong with your vehicle. You have 6 weeks to fix it and come back to get it passed.
And Mr. Ward, tell us a little bit about your role and responsibilities at the licensing division.
Okay, my responsibilities at the road at licensing. We tend to go out on road check duties on very, very often because we have challenges where people drive without driver's permit, we have people driving without insurance, and a lot of people driving without seat belts and defective tires as usual. Under the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, we tend to take it very seriously, especially when people driving without their driver's permit, all right? Because at that point in time, the insurance does not cover you because the insurance comes on a void. So we face a challenge in which we have to have the people understand the differences in the law and why we need to have these things implemented, why we have to be very strong and serious with it.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this week's Delving Deeper.
You're welcome.
Now let's bring in Mr. Clarke to rejoin the conversation. And speaking about the digital transformation of the licensing division, can you just speak to the online provisional permit system?
Online provisional permit system alone? Okay. I'm just saying
Since
this
that's
to
the
say we have
most
so many.
recent
Yes. And I'm happy and
change.
proud to talk about that because there are several. But we'll talk about this system and you will see the level of integration. We are proud and we are pleased that the fact that we have launched what we call the online provisional permit system. And I want to break that down a bit. That is basically a system where you could apply for your driver's permit for what we call first issue. So if someone is seeking to interface with the licensing department to apply for a permit, we normally know it as what we call a learner's permit, and everybody understands that. So to apply for your learner's permit, you can now do it online, and I'll talk about that some more. Also, too, if you're applying for an endorsement, in other words, you want to move from Class 3 to Class 4, Class 4 to 5, Class 1, you can now use that online provisional permit to apply for that system online. It brings with it a number of benefits. One, apart from data validation, we can now validate the data before you come to us. You no longer need to basically go and have your picture taken somewhere and walk to the license office with that photograph. You can use it from your cell phone. Just make sure you adhere to the current background and so forth. It allows you the opportunity, I want to make this clear, for persons who participate in the online process can now conduct their regulations, that's the written exam, at any licensing site or their driving test. Meaning, if I apply for my provisional permit in San Fernando licensing office, I can walk in to Rice Road licensing office and sit my regulation exam. You no longer need to write the commissioner for that to be done, and similar to a driving test. Let me tell you what that will do for the office. We have persons writing to the commissioner for all sorts of reasons. They fail the exam, they have challenges because of where I live, where I move. Some even feel that for some reason an officer might be spiting them in their having to fail their driving tests or regulations, etc. We are saying we want to empower our customers. You know, you can now rove and be participate in a process that is healthy for you, because we are looking for good drivers. That system also integrates with our cash register system, meaning your provisional permit cannot be printed unless you participate in the requirements in terms of paying the actual revenue that is required. So no one could give you a document and say you have a provisional permit and then get it into the system and licensing. And more so, you cannot conduct that regulation exams or your driving test or even get your physical permit itself unless you come through that digitized process of our provisional permit system. And I switch it a bit here now, from online to provisional, because we do capture the data online, but our internal systems from absorbing that data is fully integrated to what? To now stop some of the practices and the ills we have had in the licensing department over the years. And that's just one of the integrated systems we have currently, and one we have launched recently apart from our suite of applications. Piggybacking from the U-turn system, that's the fixed penalty system that Mr. Winter described. If one is issued basically a fixed penalty ticket, you have a certain time frame to pay or contest that ticket. So sanctions, there's something the law referred to as sanctions, applies only to the fixed penalty ticket if for some reason you fail to pay that ticket. Right? If you pay your ticket, sanctions will not be applied, not demerit points. So you're talking about sanctions here. Right? So you fail to pay your ticket, sanctions will be applied to the driver's permit. Now, once sanctions are applied to someone's record, and let's say it's applied to the driver's permit, that person will not be allowed to conduct a transaction at licensing. So if you come into the licensing office to conduct a permit transaction, you come to renew, you come to do a change of name, a change of address, you will not be able to do so. And therefore one needs to basically clear that ticket before that financial liability before you could conduct transactions. I want to take the opportunity also to encourage persons who, before you visit the licensing office, go online and utilize our online permit verification system. If you can't remember that, just simply go to Google and type online permit verification. It will take you to that system, and you can see whether your driver's permit has sanctions applied to that permit.
Now, this question is for both you, Mr. Clarke, and Mr. Winter. So we'll begin with Mr. Clarke and then we'll go to Mr. Winter. What are some of your biggest challenges as Transport Commissioner, and what are some of your successes as Transport Commissioner?
I will tell you something. One of my biggest challenges in terms of Transport Commissioner, basically one, was seeking that of change the culture or the perception of the licensing department. And I recognize we can only do so by basically putting confidence into the system. In doing so, we have found challenges where persons felt for some reason that the introduction of ICT within an environment would have made them a bit redundant. And we had to quell that because that was a serious concern, because you found for some reason, even before I was commissioner, and even now, you find therefore sometimes staff sometimes may not want to participate in some of the new changes. And we have since proved that that is not so, and that is not our intention. We love our staff, we need our staff, and we try to we ensure we use them efficiently. So in treating with some of those issues, we basically will more or less seek to decentralize those staff. For example, we implemented electronic cash book. We no longer need someone to be typing in a manual cash book each time you cash for a certified copy. Someone have to write that down in the book. We no longer do that. So we simply take that cash book clerk and put them to work on the counter and provide more opportunity for customers to be served. We place them in a different area. So one of the things we were able to do is to bring back the level of confidence in staff, that management continue to basically provide that level of support. The other issue we face, and I experienced that just recently, is the data nightmare we face in licensing. You all will know persons' vehicles not being digitized, duplicate in terms of records, and these duplicates came because of the standalone processes that existed in licensing. In the past, you go to ARIMA to renew your permit, you can go to Point 14, and those systems were creating double records. So we recall at one time, you hear a person saying, but why my permit duplicate? It was duplicated because of processes of licensing, and apart from other issues. And the same thing we had for vehicle, this issue of special numbers. I want number 7. You find we have found certain vehicles registered 3 times within Trinidad, number 7, and a manual system could not have more or less bring that out. And it is hard and always hard convincing persons. We cannot leave it so. Somebody have to give in and give up and get a different number. So it's having to convince persons of some of these challenges. But nevertheless, we are making some major headway because of the systems we have in place.
And Mr. Winter?
Yes, some of the challenges I encounter is that, most of the driving population, I see that they have embraced the changes. Most of the driving population, they still abide by the rules of the road, but there's still that segment of the population that just thinks that they must operate on the road as to however they please. I'm sure you driving to get here today, you all will experience what we call a bad drive, because there are persons who still into this mentality of I have to get to work for 8 o'clock. I'll leave home at 7:59 or 8 o'clock to get there. And what happens is that you become so absent-minded and you become so flustered you may forget to put on your seatbelt. While you're on your way to the office, you're on the cell phone. While you're on the way to the office, you speed. And then a whole heap of things start to happen now. It's a whole trickle-down effect. You're sub by a law enforcement officer. You then have to face the disqualification of your driving permit. And I'm sure one of the groups of people that the Transport Commission and myself, I don't want to use the word hate, but we have a little difficulty in encountering that group of persons who will earn their living from the driving permit. So they're taxi drivers. This is the class of people we talk about. Taxi drivers, delivery drivers, maxi taxi drivers. But as the Transport Commissioner rightfully said, you have an opportunity to monitor your own driving behavior before you even get to that point of the disqualification of your driving permit. So having to face some of those people, to read some of those mitigating circumstances. But the law is the law. The law is the law. You accumulate these demerit points. Your driving behavior is not the best. We have a responsibility as the licensing authority on the law now to rehabilitate you and reform you. I always say, there's a certain level of integrity with how you use the road. And as the saying goes, integrity is doing the right thing when no one is looking. And do the right thing even if you don't see a police officer. Do the right thing even if you don't see those blue flashing lights. Do the right thing even if you don't see those boys with the blue shirts and the white shirts. I don't mean blue shirt, the white shirt guys, because I think they're most feared in the whole scheme of law enforcement officers. If you try to compare police officers and licensing officers, the people have a greater fear of licensing. So do the right thing even when the guys in the white shirts are not around. Practice integrity in your use of the road, and because We've heard too many horror stories, Ayana, of persons, fathers, mothers, children not getting back home safely. Instances where a funeral home may have to come and pick up the body. You know, just for a mother to pick up, to hear her phone ringing at 2 o'clock in the morning. Somebody fitting the description of your son was just involved in a car accident. And then when the mother goes on the scene of the accident, that son is dead because they already putting him in a body bag. And it was because sometimes of poor road practices, and that is some of the challenges I encounter on a daily basis. Some persons who still believe that they must use the road however they well please. But you know, aside from that, the successes is that in 2021, we experienced that a reduction in the road traffic accidents and road traffic fatalities. In 2022, we saw, of course, an increase. Various reasons. You know, we saw a lifting of the restrictions from COVID-19. There were a lot more people on the road, but there are certain points in time that you see those increases. So December, we all know what happens in December, Christmas time. Roads busy, people trying to shop, people trying to, you know, get things ready for Christmas. Roads busy, so you have a lot more road incidents and accidents happening at that point in time. So we saw that increase in 2022. I'm happy to report today that so far, based on the data that we've received, we have been seeing, based on it, if we do a year-to-year comparison, we are seeing a 21% reduction in road accidents and an 18% reduction in road fatalities so far for the year 2023. So if we continue on that path, I think we will close off 2023 just as we did in 2021. And if we can get road fatalities and road traffic accidents down to zero, I would be so happy and pleased that you know, that persons can get back home safely, go about their business safely. Families can have a better family life and that kind of thing.
And as we're on to your comments, Mr. Winter, any final thoughts?
Yeah, my final thoughts are, you know, it leads right back to the traffic violations that have been dominating the system. Use your seatbelt. From the time you get in the vehicle, if you know from the days of your regulations, from the time you sit behind the wheel of a car, put on your seatbelt. Watch your speed. Do not use the priority pursuit if you're not authorized to do so. Observe signage, and sometimes signage goes in hand with speed. So people who traverse that south to Port of Spain every day, you know, when you exiting the Solomon Ochoa Highway and you're approaching the Caroni intersection, people really don't notice that sign that says you reduce your speed from 100 to 60 kilometers per hour, because you start to filter in either if you want to go to the Mount Hope intersection or if you want to head to Port of Spain. So you reduce your speed to 60. When you get back onto the Church of Roosevelt Highway, you can go back to your 100. And then that takes you all the way down to Sealots. But when you get to Sealots, you see that green light, that Sealots, and you still continue at your 100, but not observing that the signage there says, reduce your speed to 50. And then as you enter the Wrightson Road intersection, there's another sign. There are multiple signs. All these things are signs. If you want to go back and check them, they do exist. As you enter the Wrightson Road, it changes to 65. And if you go further west, it then changes to 80 and those others. So it's very important that persons observe signage, observe their speed, wear your seatbelts, don't use your cell phones while driving. There's so many options, hands-free. If your car don't have a Bluetooth system, buy one of those hands-free systems. I don't even want to call the price because I don't want to market it for any one entity. But the prices of those Bluetooth or those hands-free devices are really, really cheap now. Don't talk on your cell phone while driving, because those things lead to distracted driving, speed. All these things are contributors to road traffic accidents and road traffic fatalities. So my final words are, watch those things and everybody will be living in harmony on the road. Practice integrity in the use of the road. You don't need to have blue lights flashing behind you. You don't need to see a law enforcement officer to know to abide by the rules of the road. Just practice your integrity in the use of the road and everyone would be safe.
And Mr. Clarke, your final thought.
I definitely need to endorse these sentiments Mr. Winter brought, because I'm always a strong supporter of safety is my responsibility. But I need to to digress a little bit in the context of changing the perception of licensing, because I have a core responsibility to bring integrity into that, into that system and confidence into the system. One of the things I've recognized is that as commissioner, a number of persons, for some reason, seek to reach out to me to deal with some challenge they may have in licensing, where someone may have reached out to them to participate in an illegal process. I want to take the opportunity to say that we are taking steps to ensure that we implement systems that are very transparent. I want to take the opportunity, through my final thoughts, to encourage persons to do that which is right when they are seeking service within the licensing office. If for some reason you are being asked to contribute into something that is illegal, reach out to the commissioner, reach out to the TTPS. We can work together and bring those perpetrators down within the environment and external to the environment, because it takes a collaborative network to continue that type of behavior. And we have a zero tolerance policy. Myself, and as well as a number of supporting officers and staff. I want to take the opportunity also to thank the staff of the licensing office, who I know also work very diligently in spite of the challenge we might receive. They have braced the difficult times of COVID, and we have seen a level of support. Without the committed staff in licensing office, I don't think we could even achieve what we achieved today in law enforcement provisional system. So I want to take the opportunity to really thank my staff within the licensing office.
And that's our show. Thank you, Mr. Winter. Thank you, Mr. Clarke, for joining us this week.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Join us at the same time next week for another episode of Delving Deeper. I am your host, Ayana Carter, and from all of us here, have a good night.